I think it's great that you organize this, and it's going to be a fun couple of hours now. I start out by showing you, well, I should say my name. So my name is Pernilla Wittung-Stafshede. That's 2 Swedish names as my last name, but it's been very complicated living in America having to say that name. I'm from Chalmers University in Gothenburg, Sweden. And I'll repeat some of the nice introduction that I got here, just so if you forgot it. I start out by showing you this picture. Why do I do that? This is an old picture. This turns out to be the chemistry department at Tulane University in year 2000. These are all the faculty. So there I am. In the middle is me. I'm the first woman they recruited there. And the rest of the faculty, and there's a few more not on the picture, are all men. And then when I left a couple of years later, well, I was there for 5 years. When I left 2003, since then they have not been able to recruit a woman. It turns out now they're desperate, and it's really, really hard. But this is what we're going to talk about, few female faculty. Why are there so few female faculty? And why should we care? But before we start, I just want to remind you of my scientific background, because we build our views from our experiences, so kind of good for you to know a little bit where I've been, now on a map. So I was born in the north of Sweden, in fact in this town Umeå. I moved to Gothenburg when I was little. I got educated and got my PhD in physical chemistry from Chalmers. Then I moved to America to do my postdoc. I was at Caltech in Los Angeles, and it was fun. I didn't want to go back to Sweden, and I applied for jobs in America. And I became an assistant professor at Tulane University in New Orleans. I was there for 5 years. Then I was recruited to Rice University in Texas, in Houston. There I was, so in New Orleans I was in chemistry, in Houston I was in this biochemistry and cell biology department. Then after 5 years there we had 2 small children, and we started to think a little bit, me and my husband, and we thought, let's go back to Sweden, we want that. So then something came up and I was recruited back to Sweden, to Umeå University, and I became a professor there. And they were really happy because that was the city I was born in. So they thought I was kind of closing the circle. And maybe I thought that was fine because I was there for 7 years. But then 4 years ago now, I was recruited back to Chalmers. And they think the circle is closed now. But they started a new department in biology and biological engineering. And they wanted to recruit me as one of the heads for the 4 divisions. So I came and I thought that was kind of exciting. And it was good that they wanted to do more life science. So I took the job. I was division head for 3 years. And then I left that job this year because instead I'm running a gender initiative that was starting this year. And I don't want to do too many of these additional roles because I want to do my research too. And I'll tell you more about that initiative towards the end. But that's kind of me on the map. I also want to tell you what I work on. I'm not a structural biologist per se. I'm more biochemist, biophysical chemist maybe, or biochemist. At least I have a protein structure on my arm. So I'm close by to what all of you are doing, I imagine. I started out doing protein folding, biophysics. Folded a lot of proteins. That has over the years led to more going from folding to function. So now we try to understand protein function. Zooming in on copper transport proteins, and that brings us over to cancer because some of them seems to do more things than we thought from the beginning. And protein misfolding instead of folding. And here we come into amyloids and diseases such as Parkinson's. Can you hear me? No. Okay. But that's not what we're going to talk about. But then you know kind of who I am. So why do I talk about gender equality? Well, when I was in America, starting out as young faculty, I didn't think much about gender equality. I think I was happy doing well in a male-dominated world. Maybe I was even feeling special that I could do it. Also, I was a foreigner, and I thought I had to fight harder because I came from another country. But when I was an associate professor at Rice, I started to kind of see more things. My dean at Rice didn't want to promote me to full professor because I had 2 kids. She didn't have any children. She had selected career over kids. So therefore I couldn't have both. There was also starting activities in something called Advance, which is a program in America funded by NSF that's supposed to address gender issues. So then I returned to Sweden in 2008, and like everybody else, I was surprised, because like everybody else, I thought Sweden would be the best country, everything would be gender equal, you know, and that in principle there shouldn't be any problems. But I realized, yes, still have the same inequality in academia and few women in academia in Sweden. And that eventually, after a couple of years, made me write a debate article about this, because I was annoyed that my American colleagues thought everything was so good in Sweden, and I felt it wasn't. So, and then I started to become more interested, maybe because I became older and more senior as well. If you look at Sweden, this is a global gender gap index. Sweden is in the top, with number 5 that year on this list that has 144 countries. Sweden is number 5. Spain is number 24. America is 49. So, I mean, in terms of gender equality, if you think about maternity leave, paternity leave, childcare is almost free, and healthcare and things, we are very, you know, friendly. So in a way, we're family friendly, but we're not career friendly. You still have the same issues when you get to the power and to the top of things. And truly, the more senior that I get, the more I see this problem. I'm also in a position now to speak up. As you said, I'm a food professor, I'm in the academy. I mean, it's very hard to kick me out. And I dare to say what I think now, because I feel it's important. Because a lot of young people, it's scary, because you're always depending on other people. So I feel like I have to do this for younger colleagues, and for my kids. I have 2 girls. I want them to grow up and, you know, into a better world. So that's why this is kind of, you know, feels very important to me. So when we talk about gender issues, inequality, promotion of women, sexual harassment, family planning, childcare, there are several common responses that normal people would say, or truly you can call them resistances. And what I'll do now is I'll identify these responses and address them with scientific evidence. Because even if we all have personal stories, and it's important to talk about them and bring them up and kind of, you know, discuss that, it's also very important to know that there are scientific data here. There are facts around gender inequality. So we can't just have any opinion and that's okay. You know, there are facts. So I'll show you the data with references. So the most common responses is, there's no problem. That's a denial of anything being wrong. Or it's a woman's problem. It's nothing I can do, it's biology. Women are not as good as men. Or, many people will say, not me, I'm fair, I've done the training, I follow policies. So today everything is already equal. Then you have people, many of my friends are like this. They say, it's not my problem, I don't want to care. You could do that, but I don't want to be involved. And they don't think that it affects them. Maybe you can do gender equality on the side somewhere, but you know, don't touch me. Finally, the last response are people that think that it's too much already. Women are nowadays favored. So it's, you know, it's men that we should worry about. And then they start to complain about the details. So I'm going to show you that all these responses are wrong. And I will end with some suggestions for actions and tell you about what we do at my university. So first, there is no problem. Well, there is. If you look at the data, this is data from my university, but I'll show you other data too. The higher up you go in the academic ranks, the lower the fraction of women. As we see in every country. This is now, I'm sorry, this is in Swedish down there, but to the left is professors, and it's the lowest percentage. And at my university, a technical university, even students, or PhD students, which is the bar to the right here, is not so good either. In 2018, last year, we had 17% female professors at my university. If you count all the professors that are above 67 and still hired, which are actually significant number, the percentage goes down to 14%. Turns out that this is the lowest in Sweden. So maybe, I mean, I think it's bad. And it's the lowest in Sweden, so maybe that's why my university actually decided to do something, or agreed to do something. If you look at the world, well, if you look at Sweden, the average is 28% female professors. In the world, it's lower, maybe 10-15% in the total world. I looked up Spain here. It was 15% female professors in Spain.
It's 21 now. Sorry.
It's 21 now? Okay, great. In 1 year.
26 statistic.
Ah, you're playing with the data. No. Anyway, it's still low. It doesn't matter. When you reach 25% females at the top, most often, in many professions, progression stops. And that's probably what's happening in Sweden. I think that we're kind of stuck here on around 25, and it's hard to get going further. If you look at the percent changes per year, and you can look at data 10 years back to now in different countries, the change is roughly 1% per year increase in female professors or female associate professor, all these different levels. And you can maybe say that maybe it's just to wait, right? Eventually we'll reach equality. But that's not true if we know that maybe at 25% we get stopped. So that's way too slow to just wait. But that's a normal kind of response you get. But we see a trend, so why don't just kind of continue as we do? There's not the lack of female candidates. So the reason we have so few female professors or female faculty is not a lack of students. University students have been 50-50 for many decades. In Sweden since the 70s in the undergraduate degrees. If you look at graduate PhD students, it wasn't 50-50 in the 80s, but almost. And in different fields, it's been 50-50 for a long time. My field, for example, well, or where I got my PhD in chemistry, it was 50-50, long time ago. And still they have a big problem. So it's not the lack of female students that could do this. So somehow, men are enriched in academia. And we talk about leaky pipeline or the glass ceiling as kind of ways to describe this phenomenon. Meaning that the leaky pipeline is that you lose the women on the way. They just, go out through the holes. Or the glass ceiling that you hit the ceiling at some point and you can never get to the top. It's the same trend in all of Europe. This is another type of statistics that it's for all of EU. This is a concentration of women and men at the highest academic position versus countries. So here instead, if you look at Sweden as an example, of the females in academia, 7% are professors, the highest academic rank. Of the men in academia, 19% are professors. So the women are fewer in numbers, but also within that group, a smaller fraction is at the highest position. If you look at Spain here,
What is this?
Spain, we have 11% for of the females in academia being professors and 26% of the females, of the men being professors. So this is another way to show the same thing. We also should remember that women have more responsibilities at home most often, unpaid work, which makes the situation a little bit unfair sometimes. That differs from countries to countries, and maybe in my country, in Sweden, things are a bit better on that front, but it's not fair. Or not equal. So we also must work to change the whole society. We can try to change universities, departments, the science, society, but we need to change kind of the whole system. And money equals power, and there's a pay gap in every country in the world. In Sweden, the pay gap is 13% against women, and in Spain it's 23%. And I bring up Spain here because I'm thinking that many of you are from Spain. Is that true? How many are from Spain? Wasn't particularly true. What other country should I have picked? Anyway, it gives some it was good for me because it puts Sweden in a perspective. But having said this, there is a problem. There are fewer women in science. And it's not because we have fewer students. Then you have the people that say it's a woman's problem. Well, let's be very clear. If you look at traits like ambition, maths ability, intelligence, psychological well-being, personality, cognitive performance, problem solving, there's no difference at all between men and women in how good they are at this. Until recently, it was thought that boys were better at math, but there are evidence that show that this is not true. So there's no biological differences in our abilities. On the contrary, if anything, girls do better in school than boys. So if it's not biology, what is it? Well, I guess you know this, but I would call it unconscious bias, or maybe some conscious bias sometimes too, unfortunately. And in a way, this is a popular term nowadays. Many universities have started training in unconscious bias. And it sounds good. And it's not too bad because it brings some awareness. But it does not work. You can consider unconscious bias for 30 minutes. Then you get hungry and think about candy or something like that, you know, and then it's gone. So it's very hard to control for this. And I'm going to illustrate this now with a cat and a cucumber. I hope the movie works. I think this movie is very funny, and I practiced on my own cats at home. And every time he's going to jump. But the point with this movie is to talk about that we have built-in expectations. This cat thinks a cucumber could be a snake. You have to be afraid. You know, if it is a snake, you should disappear and leave. And it's very hard to change that, even if you live in a house with nice people. And what I'm saying is that historical and cultural norms rule in society. We have this historical way of men ruling, men being in power, men doing science, and that's kind of within us and gives us this bias against women. There's this Harvard implicit association test that probes your preferences for different things, how you connect them. And if you look at science versus men and women, most people connect science with men. I do that too. I did the test, and I try to be very careful because I know what I want to be. But still, I associate men with science because it's based on how fast you connect things together somehow, unconsciously. There's this one study that's kind of amazing that they studied rewards, and they found that men are 14 times more likely to get a higher reward for the same performance than a woman. You know, that makes these differences out there. So it's not a woman's problem, for sure. Then you come to the people that say, it's not me, I've done training, I follow policies, we have policies, I'm fair. Well, we think we're fair, but again, we have these skewed norms and rules, if you look into it. These are words used in recommendation letters that people have pulled out. And to the left, you have the male-associated words, and to the right, you have female-associated words. And you know, just look at these words. We would all hire the man. You know, these extreme words, whereas the woman is exactly like you said about, you know, the evaluation from the man. So we don't think about this, but we do it. Also, if you look at student ratings of teachers, this is men and women rated by students, and it shows that female teachers are rated lower by students for the same output in all fields. Also, female teachers are often valued for looks and sexuality. This is from something called Rate My Professor. That's a website in America when you rate your students. And okay, I've been teaching in America, so I know this is true about all these comments that you get, which is not particularly fun to get. This is important because it shows two things. One is that already students are biased. Second is that this type of data is often used in promotion cases. So that's not good. And in fact, there is a bias against women all over the scientific arena. If you look at this study, which is now 20 years old, and from authors in Sweden, they showed already in the 90s that women needed to have the double number of papers to get the same something called competence score when you were evaluated for Swedish Research Council grants. The double number of papers to get the same score. You know, these two authors got a lot of trouble after they published this. They were not liked at their university. I talked to one of the authors, and she said that she had to threaten that she would go to the newspapers, otherwise they would have fired her. This is still true. Granting agencies have lower success rate for women. Here I show you, this is ERC advanced grade success rates. And the dark colors in the bottom, these are bars of how many get the grant in every study section. And there's like 1 or 2 or 0 women that get these very prestigious grants in the different study sections. The same goes for NIH success rates. It's lower for women than for men. It's not so much, but there is a difference. And maybe that can make the difference if you get it or not. I think that funding agencies makes it a little bit too easy for them because they many times say that the percent of female applicants should match the percent of females granted. But you have to think about the pool of applicants. Are the women and the men as good? You know, is that on average the same? When you see what I say later on, but you know, many times women are more kind of scared of applying. So they will be more competent or have all the criteria done before they apply, whereas men tend to apply a little bit earlier. And if we come to publications, several shows it's harder to get published if the senior author is a woman, and such papers are cited, get less citations. This was reported in a study in Nature some years ago now. There was also a recent study in PLOS Biology that looked at the gender gap in publications, and they calculated, based on the rates of change today, that it would take 100 years in several fields to reach equality. Then we have this, I think this study is almost famous now, and maybe many of you have heard of it, but John and Jennifer test. So these people in America sent out a CV of a person that was applying for a job. And to faculty around American universities. And they in some cases they called the name of the person John, and in another case Jennifer. CV was the same. And then they looked at the responses, how many wanted to hire the person, what salary would he or she get, and you know, how would they mentor him, and so on. And it turns out that it was extremely different. The guy was really, everybody wanted to hire the guy. He was more likely to get the job, and he was offered a higher salary, and they offered to mentor him much more than the woman. And this was to faculty, men and women out in America. You know, this is true all over the world. It's not to kind of blame the Americans. But this shows directly that both men and women have this bias. We don't think so, but we do. And this is a negative spiral. Even if every single kind of situation is not a huge difference, you get this negative spiral. Women are disfavored a little bit, then they get less merits, and eventually, in principle, they leave academia. And then you have your leaky pipeline. So we are not fair. And I think that's very important to kind of understand that we need to act on these things. And many people get very offended when you talk about this because they think they are fair. Then you have the people that say it's not my problem. I don't care. Well, then it's important to note that homophily is not most successful. Homophily means that men choose men. And because women are in minority, they are tough against other women to survive, like my dean I talked about. And that's not good. Complicit masculinity is another term that one can use, a flourish. And what it means is that men quietly support the culture. By doing nothing, you support what's there now. But truly, we need women's different perspectives and approaches to solve the world's problem, just like you said. And there are studies that show strength in diversity. It turns out that diverse teams publish higher impact papers and do better science. That's have been investigated. And that's what we want, right? This is another study that showed that too, that the more the diversity, the higher the success for the different studies that were done. And here they show that one has to have a critical mass of 20–30% of females in order to get the diversity. I think that's kind of sad because you wish that that number would be higher, actually. There was also a large EU report showing diversity gives better research last year. And there are many more studies that say that, you know, taking everybody into account and your different perspectives, you do better science. So gender equality is not about being kind, but I think that's a good reason to be fair. But it's also about success. And maybe that can kind of get some people going. So therefore also, it's everybody's problem. You can't say it's not my problem, because it's a way to make things better. Well, then you come to the people that say it's too much already. Women are nowadays favored and you should be happy and be quiet. Well, and people say that, many people say that you have to be so politically correct today. You can't criticize a woman anymore because that will be taken as a gender issue, so you have to be so careful. But this really is picking on details. You kind of miss the big picture if you start to kind of nag on those things. We have something called everyday microaggressions. I don't know if you can read that, but these are the tiny, thoughtless, offensive things that people say to women on a daily basis, or could be minorities as well. But you know, things that kind of, you know, she's an easy target, or I wouldn't have expected you to be a science major. Girls suck at math if you know. These little things, maybe it's not okay to say that anymore. It still happens. And these things build up, and eventually we believe in them. I remember when I was a young faculty, and I told people that when they asked what I was doing, I said I was a professor. And people would always tell me, oh, you don't look like a professor. You look like a student. And I know that in a way I felt young, maybe. But it also felt like maybe I'm not a good professor because I don't look like one. And you know, eventually that hurts. And so these things can affect women's confidence. And there are studies on that too. It's called the gender confidence gap. Studies show that women underestimate their confidence, whereas men overestimate their confidence. Women attribute success to others many times. If I say, you did something really great, oh, I had all the staff helping me around, you know. Whereas men would say, yeah, I did really good. And this is important because it's easier to see confidence than competence, because that's what shows, right? Also, this comes back to what I talked about, applying for grants and so on. You know, here it also comes in, when do you dare to apply? And this overconfidence in men give them higher status and more benefits. These are studies on university students, you know, when they come in, depending on their confidence and what happens. So it affects how we behave and treat each other. And again, this fuels this deleterious cycle of gender imbalance. So no, it's not too much already, or yet. Okay, then we come to possible solutions. Do men really want to change? I think that's a good question, and I think more and more men are aware. But this will affect somebody, right? I mean, they will lose power, things will not be as is. There will be more merit-based decisions and less, you know, friends and contacts. Of course, it's scary in a way. And if we change and we kind of, you know, are more equal or give the same opportunities, it will hurt the people that are prioritized today. I think this is interesting. I looked at this book, The Door in the Dream. This is the Academy members in America, women that talk about gender equality and how it is for them, and they all complained about it's still the same problems as in the 70s. And I was reading this and I thought it was a new book. And it was written in '96. And I realized when I read it, I could say it's the same problems we have today. You know, so in a way we talk about it, but nothing really happens. So I think that's kind of the key to come to action. And I think why there is no action, or there is action, but it's hard to get to the whole way, is that there's no magic bullet, but there are many things we must do. I think it's very important to put gender equality at the top of the strategic agenda, at the universities, at governments, or, you know, societies. Has to come from the top. leadership in each department. You need to have the vice chancellor, the department head, but you also, so you need top down, but you also need bottom up. You need to get everybody on board. And then every department differs, so there needs to be tailored work to do in the departments. Chemistry differs from physics, from biology, from electrical engineering. You know, there's different issues to kind of consider. And then we need to educate everybody. I think that's something I've learned about now when I've been going around starting this initiative at my university. I realize how many people don't know anything about what I've said now. They have no clue. I guess they don't think there is a problem because they don't know there could be a problem. So I think it's very important to talk about it and explain these things and kind of bring up the awareness. And use merits in all the hiring and all the promotions. And also consider quality over quantity, because we have these issues that I talked about in terms of publications and things like that that can kind of change the numbers a little bit. So I think what we need is a combination of direct women's support to increase the number and to help the ones in the system to get fair treatment. And also we need something long-term to change the culture. And I think the latter is the key. We need a cultural change, otherwise we'll do efforts and then nothing will, you know, it will go back to the same after we're done. So what do we do at my university? Well, I hope we're doing some real efforts to change. We'll see, we were the worst in Sweden, so I hope that we can at least be best in Sweden. But, so we have this initiative that's called Gender Initiative for Excellence, or GINI as we called it. Turns out that's very hard for Swedish people to pronounce. They don't know what to say. Because if you try to say this, start to say this in Swedish, it sounds really weird. But we think it's a good name. How we're selling this is to increase success and excellence at Chalmers. Because that's how we buy in, we think, to all the faculty and to the vice chancellor, that this can be a strategy to make the university better. And it's unique in at least 3 different ways. We have a lot of money. So we got 300 million Swedish crowns. That is 30 million euros, roughly. It's a lot of money. We think it's, I tried to search around, and I think it's the largest gender initiative in academia. There's something at the California University that was like $20 million. It's long term. It's 10 years, so we have time, maybe, to get things in place and stay that way. And it's led by faculty. I lead this, and I have a few more colleagues that help me. But the point is, I think that's an important thing, that many gender initiatives that we start out there is led by administrators or by HR. There's nothing bad about that, but still, you're not going to influence these professors out there and heads of departments. So I hope that I have more of a possibility to do that. So what we want is really 2 things. We want to create a gender equal culture, structure and systems. So really work with this cultural and norms in the departments. And what we'll do here is to analyze gender divided data. Turns out even if we know about these things, we don't have all the data, we haven't looked at it. We're going to look at gender divided data to identify an important address bias in each department. And we want to have concrete actions to improve gender equality. And that's what we, GINI, will come and help with, because it seems like they don't know what are the concrete actions to do. And this, I think that the word concrete is important, because in Sweden, at least, for many years we've tried to do gender mainstreaming, and we have a lot of documents about gender equality. But it's a lot of documents and your checklist, it's not, nothing really changes. Then we're going to increase the number of female faculty, because if we change the culture, we want to have women in that culture, right? So both things come together. So we're going to use of this money to be able to directly recruit top female professors. We can create startup packages that are competitive, so we can get them to come to a university. We will also provide internal grants, so the women in the system can get funding, and we can help there too. We'll have a visiting professorship program, so we get more women on campus. And we'll do a lot of small things, seminars and educations and all kinds of things that I haven't figured out. So I'm just going to show you one slide here to show you kind of what we're working with. this is my university. These are the departments. There are 13 departments, and they have funny abbreviations. But K is chemistry, F is physics, for example. Bio is biology. What I show here is the % female professors. And what you can see is that a few departments are very good, 50-50. Well, 3 maybe. And most of them have 1 or 2 female professors. And they all have different reasons for this. Some of them have lots of teaching, others have very few faculty, others have more. But this is what we have. So there's large variations. And what we plan to do and what we have started is to work with every department and develop tailored actions and concrete actions for that department. So we'll pick out things. We think you should focus on promotion or retention, or you should do this, or put your money here. And we'll give them money to do things too. So nobody can say we don't have money to do this. So there should be no reason not to do anything. This is what we did, and this created a lot of anger among the heads of departments, I can tell you. So we went around and met every head of department, me and my colleague, to discuss their gender equality. What are their plans? What are their commitments? So then we secretly scored them after each meeting. So we scored them on commitment to gender equality on the y-axis and gender equality plans. And 10 is best and 0 is not good. Nobody got 0. And you can see there's a few departments up there in the corner that seems to be good. They are committed, they have plans. But then most of them are in the mid, like down or low on both of these axes. Okay, so I showed this. This is just for us internal to kind of see where they are and how different they are. I showed this to the head of the departments actually last week, and they were all very upset. Not that they wanted to know what to do to be better. They were all angry with me, like, how did you score us? You did wrong. You know, that cannot be right. So everybody thought I scored them wrong. So it was kind of funny. What we need to do, and I think this is important, we need to go out and meet many groups. So we met the heads of departments. We need to meet women. We need to meet students. We need to meet maybe the researchers or the postdocs, or maybe the men, to kind of understand what goes on in each department. Because many times the head of departments want to do well, but they don't have the power to affect the whole department. So the goal we've set for this Genie project, I shouldn't call it project, initiative, because we want it to be kind of permanent in the end. Within 10 years, we want to have 40% female professors. Theoretically, it's possible if you count on how many are retired and you hire some new people. We could reach that, but I think it will be very hard. And we want to have work environment improvements. And that's what we're working now. How do you measure that? How do you measure this culture thing? But there are ways. And I think what I've learned from meeting people and talking about this and really thinking about this for a while now is that key to success is to get everyone on board. Both the formal and the informal leaders. We need to get these senior professors in the departments that kind of dictate the environment around them. We need to get them on our side together. So with that, this is my last slide. Many of you are students or young faculty. What can everyone do? Not all of you can start an initiative, but you can push for it, of course. But what can we do on a daily basis? Well, I think what we can do is to push on our leaders to act, be a pain. We need to say this over and over again and get action on these things. Speak up when things are wrong. Sometimes that's hard, and sometimes that's scary because, people would think that you're always complaining and so on. But I think it's very important to speak up when we see things that are not right. And get engaged. Bring out gender-divided facts for your department or your group of faculty. Set up educational seminars. Invite somebody to talk about this so that you bring the topic on the table. Bring in female speakers. If you have a seminar series, we can just help invite more women. And if women get achievements, highlight that, Suggest that to whoever in your department, do the newsletter or something. And important, look out for, support, and encourage other women. As long as there's an old boys network, we need to have a strong female network and help each other. So start networks and get a mentor. Get somebody senior that can advise you and ask about things. Or mentor younger ones. Believe in yourself. Yes. It will take time, but the important thing is to never give up, and together we can make change happen. Especially if that together involves men. We need to get men on this side and understand this issue and the importance of this topic, and just to be fair. And I show you this picture. It was a terrible picture to take. I don't know if you see, it's me, and I look like a guy sitting there with a cigar, and it was for some article, and they wanted me to act like a man. And it was kind of funny because it was very weird, right? And a lot of people commented on that. If that had been my vice chancellor sitting like that, it would have been fine. But now it's me. But the point with that is that we don't have to become like men. I mean, we should be as we are, and diversity and the differences is what we should honor. So this is ironic. So with that, I'm going to stop and say thank you very, very much for listening. And I think maybe there's time for questions.